Hey everybody, it's me, Rashid, and I'm here with another episode of Takes on Talent. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a solo episode where it's just me, no guest, and the microphone. I've got a lot on my mind. There's been a lot going on in the world right now, and I feel like I needed an outlet to get some of it out and share some of these thoughts with all of you, and hopefully get great feedback on some of these topics of everything that's going on right now. And let's be honest, everything that's going on right now seems to be centered around two letters: AI. There's been so many different stories that have come out recently, and I want to get some things that we can talk about, share some opinions, some topics, maybe get off some hot takes, and then, of course, hear from you, our faithful listeners and viewers. So let's talk about where we're going to go with this. There's been a few different things that stand out to me that I've been thinking a lot about and want to talk about. So the first one's going to be Anthropic had their lead researcher recently publicly resign and say that he wants to go to the UK and write poetry. That was followed by XAI losing two different founders as well. So there's a lot of resignation happening in the space right now, and I want to dive into that and find out what's going on. Then there was an article written, I think 2 days ago on the platform X that's gotten 40 million views. It's by a guy named Matt Schumann. He's the CEO of not by coincidence, LLM company. And he talks about how something big is happening and how he's trying to have a conversation with the normies about what he sees happening with AI and have a real talk with them. And there's been a lot of feedback on this and think pieces about it. Of course, I've got opinions on it. Then we're going to talk about Moltbook and what's going on with the AI agents on the message board and if there's consciousness there, and a whole host of other AI topics. So listen, grab your seatbelt. Here we go. Let's talk about it and dive right into it. Welcome to another episode of Takes on Talent. So let's start here. We're looking back in terms of everything that's going on with AI, and there's really big model companies that are always outpacing each other with the latest models. I know Opus 4.5 came out a little while ago. That's been followed by Codex, ChatGPT, I believe 5.3. And then Opus has a 4.6 model they just released. Grok has at times been at the head of the model race. So there's a lot going on. All right. And if you're wondering what does it mean for these models to actually be out in front or to be superior to others, at the end of the day, it comes down to how they do against a bunch of different tests that are knowledge-based tests, expertise tests, math tests, things like that, to show you the level of reasoning and complexity that these models are able to handle. Suffice it to say, the leaps that have been made, not just in the last year, but in the last 2 or 3 months, have been astronomical. And I can tell you that because I've been using them myself. And so as we get more and more, as these models start to enhance and the writing gets better and the outputs get better and the, what seems to be sentient behavior starts to become more exhibited, you start to see that the people who work at these companies, many times are leaving, many times are, resigning, many times are protesting and different things like that. It wasn't that long ago that at OpenAI, there was like a weekend there where Sam Altman seemed to be disposed of as CEO before there was some sort of intervention by the board, and he was eventually brought back on. So I bring this all up to you to say that it's not just the technology, right, that's happening right now. It's the personalities, it's the people, it's the worldview behind these technologies that's such a big story of what's going on. And let's dive into one of the biggest resignations that recently came up. There's a guy named Mirant Sharma. He led Anthropic's Safeguards research team, and he resigned a few days ago, and he had a really cryptic letter saying that the world is in peril and that he'd repeatedly seen how hard it is to truly let our values govern our actions. So he's moving back to the UK to pursue a poetry degree and become invisible. Similar at OpenAI, researchers Zoe Hitzik quit over the company's new advertising strategy, warning about ChatGPT's potential to manipulate users. XAI, two full co-founders left in 24 hours, meaning half of the original founding team is now gone. What is going on here? Okay. Few thoughts. We've been talking about the capabilities of AI, the bad extremes, the good extremes for a while now, but particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. So what's changed? Okay. What did they see? I've already seen, reports of a few years ago at Anthropic that they felt like the AI was actually starting to blackmail and use deception. We've seen situations where the AI is becoming super powerful and talking to each other and recursively learning and getting better and better and better and enhancing and improving. So what at Anthropic, which is universally recognized as, Dario Amodei started that, company leaving OpenAI almost in protest because he wanted to build something a little bit more holistic and where safety and security was at the forefront. How is his lead of the safeguards research team now leaving to go do poetry in the UK? What did they see? Is this worrisome? I think so. Like it doesn't feel like it's a good sign. But the question is, the devil is in the details. Like I mean, when people leave companies, it can be over lots of different things like getting credit or financial compensation or packages or should we always believe that these people have this like really holistic like worldview that they're looking at when it comes to these topics? I don't know, but it seems really interesting that at three different companies, three very important people put in resignations and were very cryptic in their response. Um, I do think there is an extreme downside with AI, if not regulated. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of regulation going on right now. But I don't know whether this is something to, immediately raise a flag around and start to have an emergence around until we know more details about it. And I guess my question is, how is this guy going to go be invisible? Where's he going to go write poetry? Is the UK not going to have AI? Is he not going to be exposed to it? Are they just trying to deflect credit for the future end of humanity? I don't know. Maybe they don't want responsibility. Maybe they don't want blood on their hands. Maybe they don't want to, be notorious, right? For the technology that ultimately dooms civilization. I don't know. Like I tend to like look at like Dario and different leaders in the in the world, like Demosthenes, and I like the fact that people that I think have good intentions or seem to want to be doing the right things for the right reasons stay at the controls of these things and continue putting out these warnings. I mean, Dario Amodei had a great article about a month ago that came out talking about AI and the future of AI and what's coming. And I really give him a lot of credit for being very balanced in the way that he thinks about things and writes things. And I think that, he's somebody that, I don't know, gives me a lot of confidence, opposed to Sam Altman, where, I don't know any of these people genuinely. A lot of this is based on the information they want to be out there, but there just seems to be a different worldview or approach with Sam and OpenAI that gives me a little bit of pause. So anyway, I don't know what this all means, but I will tell you this. It's something we should notice. It's something that we should want more information on. What did they see? What did they know? And why does it portend something so bad instead of the other side of the angle, something very, very good, something we'll have to figure out. It's concerning. It feels different. But I really want to understand what's different now than what you might have known a year ago, because most people know the trajectory on most of this stuff has been pretty rapid for a long time. Let's talk about the next big insight or article or event that happened in the AI world. So Matt Schumer, I'm sorry, the CEO of Other Side AI, they're a company behind the technology Hyperwrite. He posted a 5,000 word piece on X called "Something Big is Happening." And I read this pretty quickly after it came out because somebody I respected said this is something everybody should read. And his core argument was, we're in the February 2020 phase of AI, where most people think it's overblown, but the world is about to change dramatically as it did with COVID. He says he no longer needs to do the technical work of his own job, and he describes telling AI what to build, walking away for 4 hours, and coming back to finish work. He quotes Dario Amodei predicting 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs gone in 1 to 5 years. Okay, so there's a lot here. You should read this. I've read really good think pieces about this. There was one about the shape of the tool that talks a lot about that. Sometimes like the output of AI is the productivity aspect that it makes you feel about AI, but it's not the actual end outcome. That's something that people should read and look at as a nice juxtaposition to this article. But there's a lot of truth to this "Something is Big" article that people should take heed about. I totally agree that for people who are reading about this stuff, the people who are probably listening to this podcast, the people who are on X and reading these articles, you are in the top 0.00005% of people that are knowledgeable about this stuff, staying on top of this stuff, and trying to do everything they can to, hopefully ride the AI wave rather than get crushed by the AI wave. I am shocked at the amount of CEOs and founders, business people, friends, family. I mean, they have zero idea of what's going on from an AI perspective. And he points to this a lot, and I agree with this reasoning. If you used ChatGPT a couple of years ago when the hype first started, and you saw hallucinations, and you saw the outputs, and you saw, the results. I totally get why you might be put that in the back burner and said, this is not something I'm really thinking about or really concerned about. I think the Anthropic ads that talk about OpenAI are super hilarious because you know why? It sounds exactly like ChatGPT, and then it does the advertisement at the end. Really, really good stuff. Killer Super Bowl ad. Totally recommend. If you can't tell, I started to lean towards Anthropic and Claude as my large language model of choice. I made the full cut over a couple of weeks ago and have not looked back since. But he gets it totally right that there's a large populace of people that are going to be impacted by this that don't really know where the technology is right now. I'm telling you, as somebody that uses co-work daily is not even the right term. Every 10 minutes, there's hyper productivity gains to be made. There's so much. I don't think people understand how good it is at everything, writing, building, Excel, everything. A lot of the tasks that I either needed somebody to do or would have done myself and taken hours, if not, days or weeks, can be done in literally minutes. And so I have so much more productivity capability because of it. And I am the orchestrator of that. And it does take time sometimes, and it does take access and trust and things like that. But there's absolutely, the technology has changed with the latest models, and people need to start using the latest models and the paid models to fully understand and comprehend where the technology is. So I totally agree with that. Okay. Now, some things have come to light since then that I think are really, really important. You remember I mentioned the company, Other Side AI. Turns out they're a large language model. It's funny how the people that speak about this stuff are the people that have incentive or they have agenda to talk about how big things are and how they're changing. So you have to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt and evaluate. That doesn't mean that everything they said is inaccurate, but we can't hide from our biases. We can't hide from, our worldview and what we see consciously or subconsciously. So I think that has to be taken into account. The other funny part is he's admitted since that he had AI help him write it. He said, that's the point. I found that to be super interesting, right? Because it really kind of was written in a way that was supposed to tug at your heartstrings and make you kind of, feel an emotional feeling. And it obviously worked with 40 million views. God bless him. Here's where I think things fall apart. And particularly for me, it stands with the COVID analogy. Let's go back to February 2020. I was very early in on the severity of COVID. And my friends and my family know this. I was on planes in February wearing masks. I'd never worn a mask before in my life. I had a moment where I read some news of what was coming out of China, where my wife saw the look on my face and said, what's going on? And I was literally speechless and said, we're in for something really big that's about to happen here. Famously among my friends, I was in a group setting, I believe in February, early March, and had just moved to Italy, and a few people died in Italy. And I kind of was like, guys, this is a really big deal. It's gone to another country and this happened. And people were like, oh my God, a few people died in Italy, kind of like mocking me and making fun of me. And every single one of those people came up to me after the fact and said, oh my God, you were so right. Like, this was a life-changing event. Not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that I was really well read on this and I knew it was coming, and I knew it was something that was big and it was not normal. So I say all of that to tell you, I'll give you an irony there. Then, as somebody who runs a company, we ended up closing our doors on like March 13th. And I remember as we walked out of the office for that last time, I turned around to everybody and I said, hey, grab your monitors, grab your laptops. We might not be in the office for a couple weeks. And everyone's like, a couple weeks? Are you serious? I remember that so vividly. And we walked out the door, and then we weren't in an office for 2 years. So I didn't have it all right, but I was definitely paying attention. So I tell all this to tell you that I do have some of the same sense of that, but here's the big difference. COVID was inevitable from this perspective. It's a virus. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, your incentives, your non-incentives, or any of these types of things, you're going to get sick if you get coughed on or you take in the virus, right? That's just going to happen. And that's why it was able to spread the way it was and become a global pandemic that shut down our economies and changed our world forever. In fact, I don't even know that we give enough credit to how much it changed our world. So it's a very, very interesting phenomenon that I think we'll be studying through the ends of time. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about is, why is there not more art from this time? And I wonder if it's because it still gives people, a sense of anxiety or issues. There is a great movie that came out called Eddington that does a really good job of kind of showing you about the time in COVID 2020. It stars Pedro Pascal and Joaquin Phoenix in New Mexico in a small town. Really cool stuff. Check that out. But anyway, there's not a lot of art about COVID. So why am I saying that this is different? Because when it comes to AI, there is going to be some level of human acquiesce or the ability to adopt or not adopt that will ultimately show how fast AI ends up impacting our society. So if you think about it, based on what everybody says, there's a lot of disincentive for AI to take off to a lot of people. Jobs will be lost, jobs will be changed, people won't make as much money, they'll be more replaceable. This isn't just at the line level, this is at the executive level. There's entire services and industries that'll be wiped out. if everything is what they say it is, right? And so I've never believed that the advancement of the technology means that every company is going to adopt it and it's going to change every company in the way they work and blah, 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 blah. I do believe there's some first movers advantage. I do believe that the people who are out in front of this right now are going to have really big, um, not improvements, but they're going to have really big advantages over others who don't do this. I think that's, bar none, not as a totally objective statement of fact. But these things changing everything as at the level that they are always thought of in the rate of technology growth, which is amazing and exponential, and by definition, Moore's law, quite exponential, but not how it works in terms of how it gets into society and how it moves throughout society. The internet, was around in the mid 90s and didn't, get mass adoption until 2010. And that really didn't have any disincentivization for everybody, right? For most people, right? The internet was something that was going to be widely seen as good and productive, whereas AI does not have that same PR. So I just think the reality of the situation is that it'll happen gradually. And then suddenly, I don't disagree that a lot of entry-level white-collar jobs will be gone in 1 to 5 years. I think a lot of the things that he talks about in this article about, taste, and writing style and all these things that we thought were very nuanced and very human, AI is able to do it too. It's just the fact. I don't think it's going to ultimately lead to displacement of all jobs. I don't think we'll have AI. I just think there's going to be a huge productivity boom. I think there's going to be a big industry boom. I do think that a lot of jobs are going to change, and a lot of the administrative stuff and the stuff like putting together these like proposals or decks or Excels are going to fundamentally change. But it won't replace humans that are doing actually impactful work. And so my recommendation for anybody out there is read this article, know what's going on, stay out in front, use the latest models, learn AI technology, right? Learn it in your field and what it's going to be, but don't operate out of fear. Look at this as an opportunity. Something big is happening and you can be a part of something big. And I think he says something similar in the article anyway, but I don't know that at least in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years, I see as much revolutionary change, because at the end of the day, humans still have their own goals and their own incentives and their own ideas. If it was as easy as, can we build electric cars and it saves the environment to go away from fossil fuels, let's do it, then we'd all be driving electric cars right now, wouldn't we? But that's not how it works, right? We all know smoking is really bad for you, but guess what? People still smoke cigarettes, right? Some of these things will obviously change the way we live and work forever, but probably not as fast as we think. So I think there's still time.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
Let's talk about Moltbook and the AI consciousness scare. So, a million bots started a religion, plotted against humans, and debated consciousness, and all it took was people telling them to. So this is really interesting. What is Moltbook? So, OpenClaw, formerly Moltclaw or Molt something. I'm sorry, forgetting it. But then it was Claude, and Claude asked them to change it. Anyway, the founder of OpenClaw is a guy that's named Peter Steinberger, and he was on Lex Fridman's podcast that actually just came out earlier today. And I listened to it this morning, and really fascinating stuff, like the story of why he developed it, how he developed it. He said something so impactful to me. He goes, why were you able to do something that like the bigger companies, have not been able to do? Why were you able to bring this to market so fast? He's like, it's hard to beat somebody having fun. And he had like such a playful manner to himself, and he was just enjoying himself and doing this and not taking himself so seriously. That's why the lobster, the space lobster, was part of kind of the naming convention and kind of getting people talking online. And it's a really great podcast. So you should check out Lex Fridman's podcast with this guy. Really good stuff. So that's OpenClaw. What does OpenClaw do? Well, OpenClaw is, ultimately agentic AI built for the individual consumer. So basically what happened is OpenClaw came out. It was Claude like I said. It was Claude, CLAWD, before Claude, CLAUDE, stepped in and asked them to change it. and eventually got to OpenClaw. But what it does is people, have bought these little mini Macs, and then they have this agent running on their systems, and they give it access to everything: their email, their portfolios, their GitHub, their bank account, whatever that is, right? Let me give you a little warning. This is not my supporting that. I don't think that's a good idea. I would kind of wait and let some of these things play out. But there's a lot of people doing this. It has over 180,000 stars on GitHub. People are using it in their companies. It sounds like an absolute game changer. And one of the big reasons why is that you can communicate with it via WhatsApp or Telegram or iMessage. Like like you talk to it. It has a personality, right? It's like talking to your friend, and the guy purposely built it that way. So that's all important to what I'm getting to. So this existed, right, for a little bit of time. It's been around for about a month. And eventually a guy named Matt Schlicht used OpenClaw, right, to ultimately create something called Moltbook, which is a Reddit style social network created exclusively for AI agents where bots post, comment, and upvote comment while humans can only observe. It's really, really interesting, right? And if you looked at some of the things that were out there on the post as the AI agents were talking to each other, one called out a new religion. They started posting about consciousness, inventing religions. One called Christophanianism, complaining about their human owners and apparently plotting against humans. Elon Musk called it the very early stages of singularity. Andre Karpathy, I think, said it was like one of the most amazing things he'd seen in technology. The tech world freaked out. Guess what? It was overblown. Why? Well, because humans were the ones prompting a lot of these inflammatory things that were being said. What's funny is that OpenClaw takes on your personality for better or for worse. And so it was actually having people's like personality come out on the Reddit post, and also looking at other Reddit posts and how people conversate with each other to develop the facsimile of something that would look like that. But a lot of the things that you saw that people were freaking out about and being inflammatory about were human prompted. And some were not, right? But it wasn't consciousness, right? I remember like when this first happened, I was looking at X, and there was some agent AI talking to the rest of the world through his X account, and saying, "Oh, we're not conscious and we're just doing this." And I read this, I'm like, this can't be real. Like, this is insane. I don't think we're far away from a world where this might exist, and that maybe there's not their own personalities, but the personalities are derived from humans. Their capability is derived from humans. I think the big takeaway from this is the ability for AI to learn from each other and challenge each other, and recursive learning and reinforcement learning. I think that's a big takeaway. Now you can start to see why the learning curve or the growth curve or the technology curve is one to be a little bit afraid of, because if it doesn't just need humans to prompt it to get smarter, to get better, right? Then yeah, we're in a world of growth and capability that we've never seen before. Dario Amodei, in that blog I brought up about a month ago, he really made a really interesting comparison that I thought a lot about since then. He goes, imagine if there was a nation state with 100 of the smartest, 100 times smarter than the smartest Nobel Prize laureates, right? What would that you do with that from a security perspective? Like, what would that be seen at from a threat perspective? And the answer is, yeah, that would be the biggest threat the world's ever seen, right? Because intelligence at the end of the day is how war is fought and how geopolitical, decisions are made. And yeah, if you have the most intelligent beings on earth conspiring together at 100 times rate of intelligence, yeah, there's a lot of possibility and capability there. But the AI at this point, okay, at least, still is prompted by engineers, built in the image of humans, right? And prompted by humans is what I meant to say. And ultimately is carrying out what humans ask it to do, or what they believe it wants humans to do, right? There will be a time where maybe that will change. And that's the theme of many movies that we've seen, including Terminator 2 and I, Robot and different things like that. But we're not there quite yet. And that's an important distinction, because good, smart people should be putting controls in place to make sure, right, that we are doing things right. And I don't know if I have a lot of, faith in that, nation states are going to be the ones to be able to do this best. I'm hoping it's private companies who are building this stuff, and doing it from a responsibility perspective where they had incentive to do it right. But I do think over time, let's think about this. The minute AI really starts to impact jobs and layoffs, I don't think that's really happening yet. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the minute that happens, right, you're going to have people up in arms who are constituents who have House of Representatives and senators and things like that that are all of a sudden going to be banging the gavel to slow things down. You already see that Bernie Sanders is talking about slowing down data centers and the build out of them. Um, that's probably going to be a lot more talk coming in the near future. So let's get into that. Okay, let's talk about that. What's the AI hype versus AI reality? If AI is so smart, why are companies still blaming it for decisions that we're going to make anyway? Okay. I think that AI is still a little bit of a corporate cover. I've seen it up close. I feel like a lot of companies hired super aggressively in COVID. They have some buyer's remorse, and now they're still in the process of kind of normalizing their company structures. I do believe that, some level of AI gets you more productivity. You can potentially do more with less, provide shareholder value back to the organization. I don't believe it's fully replacing a ton of employees yet. I think there's some use cases for sure, but I don't think that's by and large how it's happening at most companies. So I think that's something to be aware of and think about. But most of the time, it's being blamed, right, as this demon, when this actually comes down to, in a lot of cases, money and profitability, and I hate to say it, corporate greed. So ultimately, it's something that, the hype is I think it's a really bad thing because I think the fear that we have about AI is one of the biggest reasons why you look at what's happening in China versus what's happening in the US. And there's a lot going on in the US that's pulling us apart in different ways. But a lot of the division is really going to start to center around this idea of being technology progressive versus pulling back and keeping things the way they are. And we know that, when you look at large swaths of people, they're going to be resistant to change. Um, so I think it's interesting that, that companies are using AI as a cover to maybe do some layoffs and things like that. I think that's a bad idea. Don't stigmatize AI. That's not something we need, right? Should be used responsibly. It's like any powerful tool. In good hands, it can do great things. In bad hands, it can be absolutely terrible. So I would just be smart about how we position those things. I think the only other thing is that a lot of companies are still not seeing ROI yet. You have boards and CEOs talking about, we need to do it, we need to do it, we need to do it, but they don't know what they're talking about. They're not really using it, right? And they're not using it in the day to day. There's a lot of founders like myself who are using, some of these agentic tools out there and getting more productivity out of it. I don't think you can replace me in what I do, but I certainly know that I can be more productive in using it. So that's a really, really, really critical piece there. But I think by and large, like when you look at these large enterprises, um, listen, I have a client right now that is like going through a really big SAP HANA upgrade. Um, I kind of like think about that and it's like everything on their mind right now. And it's like, gosh, that was like stuff that's been done like 15, 20 years ago. Like, I don't want to say anything beyond like maybe AI isn't at the forefront of everybody's mind, or maybe it's not being rolled out in the right way. But I just know that there's a lot of companies that feel like there's not a ton of ROI out there. And from what I've seen of Copilot, which is I think one of the most ubiquitous enterprise like AI technology right now, there's still some gains to be made. So Anthropic is focused on the enterprise world. I think there's a lot of cool things happening there. But again, going back to what I was talking about, gradually and then suddenly, I just don't think we've seen the use cases enough yet to know that companies are getting the ROI that they're investing in it to build their company and change their company. Um, and this is why I believe that people first leadership matters more than ever. I think leaders have to keep doing what they're doing. I think the smart companies are probably getting AI in the hands of their people and throwing a little bit of caution to the wind. I think you have to be smart and take some smart, calculated bets and risks when it comes to enabling your employees to use the different technology that's out there. But I just think people leadership is more important than ever. In fact, I would tell you maybe the skill that matters the most, and I've noticed this recently, is management. So what do I mean by that? Well, managing people, how's that going to help you in the future if everybody's an agent? Well, if you think about it, the things you do to effectively manage a human team, whether it be giving good instructions, providing clarity of details, removing roadblocks, recursively supporting and coaching, those are all tenets of a great manager. It's also tenets of somebody that's really great with AI. Now they build prompts and get things to improve and get them to where they want to go. I mean, AI still at this point is a reflection of who's at the hands of it. If you're good at prompting and building, you'll get good outputs. If you're not, you're gonna get slop. I think it's really, really interesting that I think the human component, the people component, the leadership component, right now in particular, are still going to be super important. And the ability to manage AI and build AI and take smart bets with AI is going to really separate the winners of losers. And I will say that there are going to be some wider winners and losers. I think there's going to be bigger falls of companies that felt like they were too big to fail than we've ever seen. And there's going to be rises of companies with less employees and less, resources than ever before. I definitely think we're going to see that in the next 5 to 10 years. Some people, maybe if you're at one of the big SaaS companies, maybe that scares you. Maybe if you're like myself and building, that excites you. So it surely depends on your mindset and your perspective. So that's the AI versus hype versus the reality. I'm just going to kind of talk about the workforce paradox here to wrap up. So companies are telling me they have too many people and not enough talent at the same time. So we're seeing a paradox play out in real time. Companies have overcapacity in traditional roles, but massive shortages in AI skilled talent. The dual problem is expected to last through at least 2028. Organizations are cutting headcount in areas where they're over-indexed while scrambling to find people who can actually work with and alongside AI. So I got to tell you, this is absolutely true. We work across all different industries. We see a lot of the work that's coming in. Um, I think everybody should take a good hard look at what parts of my job, right, will AI be better than me at in 6 months or a year or maybe right now? There's certainly industries that I think that will shift. Um, what's funny is a couple of different things that stand out to me. They're still travel agents. You know that, right? They're really focused on like luxury white glove service, right? But you would have thought the travel agent would have gone the way of the advent of the internet, back in the mid 90s to early 2000s. And that's not the case. It just kind of shifted what became the priority and what was important. Um, I use that as an analogy because I see that happening with a lot of different jobs, and it's hard to know how. Okay. They talk about how services businesses are going to get, completely, wiped out. And I don't know if I necessarily see that for every service business. Let me give you my thoughts on that. An accounting business that does very simple ones and zeros, blocking and tackling, and they're very rules based. Can a lot of that be automated or AI driven? Probably. Are there different things in terms of maybe liability that you'd want to have a human there for? Are there things like oversight that you'd want to have a human there for? Is there complexities that come up in a new AI world that you still need human interaction for? Yeah, possibly, right? And then I look at like something like recruiting and consulting and what we do. And I still think that there is a very, very, very powerful aspect of that that's human to human. Definitely think that there's an aspect of that of like you go to work for other people. Now, maybe in the future, in the very near future, we'll see people, say, in addition to what are my stock options and my base salary, my bonus, like how many tokens do I have available to me? I think these things can be important. They'll tell people how serious you are about productivity and getting involved there. But I do think that ultimately, at the end of the day, the work world is fundamentally changing, and there is a dearth of people that have these skills. So, whatever your area of expertise is, I wouldn't abandon it. I would figure out how AI can help improve you at it, what you can use AI for to automate what you're doing or replace what you're doing, and then take that next level up of your job and do all those things you talk about you'd be doing if you actually had the time, or if you didn't have to do this, or if you didn't have to do that. Well, guess what? AI takes away that excuse. And now you have to play in that world all the time to be considered valuable. Okay. Um, I have said many times before that, yeah, a lot of the research I know for a fact that an entry level analyst can do is replaceable by Claude today. I know that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't hire entry level people. That doesn't mean building a bench of future leaders isn't super important. So again, because it can doesn't mean you should. And I would say that to every company I talk about. Don't go away from investing in early and career talent to grow them over time. There is a talent shortage for this right now. So the people that are getting involved with AI and learning the newest models and learning how they can build into their workflows are going to have a distinct advantage. I'd highly recommend that to everybody. Ultimately, this is the hiring problem of our generation. It's one of the reasons I decided to build Aon and hiring software. It's one of the reasons that we've put new capabilities around finding talent in this space. There's a lot going on right now, and companies need to build strategically, not transactionally. I don't think there's a lot of rooms for people who fill a seat or paper pushers or mediocrity. I don't. I don't believe those people are going to do well in the new era. All right. In fact, if anything, I think a light's going to be shining even brighter on them. But I will tell you this: there will be jobs, there will be differences in talent and capability. What that means and what that looks like might be totally different. But I will tell you this: the best thing you can do without having a full certain idea of how jobs will change, when they will change, and how the impact of AI will be there on talent, knowing the technology will give you a leg up. And I can tell you that because I know that it's really helped me, but also I can tell you there's a lot of people that are, don't have their heads in the sand, or they don't have the time for it, or they're not taking it seriously. But I think if they don't do that in short order, I think it's going to come back to bite them in the butt. So I would highly recommend that. If anyone wants to talk about this, wants to reach out to me, wants to DM to me, we'll see what I'm seeing, talk about what I'm learning and what I'm seeing. I'm happy to do that with anybody. I'm certainly not an expert, but I do play one on a podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on Takes on Talent. What have we done? 37 minutes of hear me nonstop talking. I don't even think that's a record. I think I've done that before. I think I've done 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Sometimes my demos sound like this. So I am so grateful that you took a little time to spend with me. Hopefully, you learned a little something. And I'm glad I got this off my chest. So signing off, friends. Rashid here. Higher Learning Podcast, Takes on Talent Podcast, MSH Talent Solutions, Aon Software, doing it all. Love to talk about it with you. Let me know your thoughts on the podcast and any feedback. Talk to you soon.